Hi guys, I'm Mark from Origin Series, and we provide online training programs for people who need guidance and structure to their workouts, either in the gym or at home. We've developed quite a large team now who are able to offer services for people in specialist areas such as improvements in weightlifting, improvements in gymnastics, improvements in endurance sports such as running, cycling or triathlon, along with just general health and fitness for people who just want to attend the gym to make themselves feel better and look better. You can find us at originseries.com or on Instagram at Origin Training.
Welcome to Real Coaching Radio, the podcast for coaches by coaches. We are here to teach you how to get the most out of your clients and yourself. This is where beauty meets the beast, brains meet brawn, and science meets, well, bro science. Welcome to Real Coaching Radio. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. Today, me and Mark, we talk about practice, not punishment. Basically, we see a lot of people going into the gym and punishing themselves from the weekend they've had before. And we just want to talk about the best ways for you to actually go into the gym and the reasons that, well, you shouldn't punish yourself. You should go in, practice the skills of exercises. You should go in with a purpose each time and maybe set your training to align with your goals. But without any further ado, let's begin the episode. I think that's one of the biggest things for me is just how lucky we are. Like, could you imagine being in that situation where you've got like your family around you and your choices are you either just kind of carry on and you face your family could get killed by like the terrorists that are around and like the war that's going on around you, or do you pass your family over in hopes that they'll have a better life?
Yeah, it's awful, man. It's so it just puts everything into perspective, really.
I think it's. I listened to another podcast, and one of they talk about stories like war stories, and these are all kind of books that were written by people in the actual war, so from like World War II, Vietnam War, things like that, and like they always remind you that this, even though it's a book, it's someone's life.
Yeah.
And I think when you see the images of like people like clutching onto planes and you like falling from planes.
Mate, I think like if you're willing to try and escape by hanging on to the outside of a plane, like I don't anything could happen in the UK, and I'm pretty sure it's never going to get to a point where like that is your only way out.
Yeah, your choices are hang on to a plane.
Yeah.
It just makes me realize how lucky we are. Like, we are genuinely so. The fact that we get to sit here, like, without the fear of someone coming, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just complete safety, aren't you, really? Like, it is mental. And even when you think back, like, lockdown was rough. But, like, it weren't that rough.
And I even think about, you remember when Chris came down and you were filming that little running promo?
Yeah.
And we were walking back from Queen Square.
Yeah.
There was the geezers in front of us and one of them passed the knife to the other one.
Knife, yeah.
And like, that was like, for me, I was like, well, that was crazy.
Yeah.
But like, that's not crazy. No. Like, when you compare it to what's going on.
It's mad, isn't
it? It's such a weird thing. I think when things like that do happen, and it is one of those situations that I don't know what there is that can be done, because it is like the world leaders, obviously, they are the people that make the decisions and stuff like that, and I'm not sure there's anything that really we can do kind of sat at home here, but it does make you take things into perspective and be a little bit more grateful for the world that you live in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The country you're in, the environment you're in, the fact that you get the choice to go to work, the fact that we get first world problems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, people moan about their rights and stuff now, like with all COVID and all this, that, and the other, but you still get it pretty easy in the UK.
It's I moan about my car, like I moan about I've got to pay all of these things out, and I'm like, that's a privilege.
Yeah.
It's a massive privilege, and I think I think gratitude is one of those things which is really hard to do sometimes until it like smacks you in the face. Like this situation, seeing what's going on, really does just hit you in the face and go, you really need to be grateful for where you're at, because you could be in this situation. Like just being as lucky as being born in this country compared to being born in another country.
Absolutely.
Hi guys, I'm Charlie from Hack the Body, Hack the Mind. I am one of the co-hosts, and if you are looking for help with your programming but don't feel like online coaching is for you, I've created Buildings. Now, Buildings is a selection of programs designed to help you achieve any goal with exercise tutorials and workout tracking all at your fingertips. So if you feel like you just need help with some programs and you just want some structure but don't feel like online coaching is for you, then please head to www.hackthebodyhackthemind.com for more information. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of this episode. The topic for today, practice not punishment. What came to your mind when seeing this? Why did this come into your head? Why did you think practice not punishment?
I think it was off the back of a lecture that I did for the PT course, actually. And we were just talking about, in some of the lectures, we were just talking about like session objectives, training for, strength, training for endurance, hypertrophy, whatever it might be. And we were kind of like linking that back to, I guess, some of the stuff you see on social media. Because all you really see on social media is people posting 1 rep maxes, or people posting, they're squatting or deadlifting with really heavy weight, or snatching or cleaning with really heavy weight. Or then like, if they're out running, they're posting PB times. And I think that people then look at that and think that's how people train. And then I think that gives, a lot of misinformation to people.
Yeah, I think the whole point of practice, not punishment, is purely that. Like, what are you going into the gym for, I guess? And I think that one of the worst things people do is they do see going into the gym as a way to repent for my sins. Like, I've gone out the weekend, I've ate really bad, so this week, like, I've got to do X amount more exercise because I've done that. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, it's, anybody that's worked in a gym, or probably even been a member of a gym and paid attention to how busy it is, Monday and Tuesday in most commercial facilities is the busiest day of the week, because for that exact reason, people have had a terrible weekend in terms of their nutrition, probably alcohol consumption. Monday comes around and there might be a little bit if there's just, good intentions, I'm going to have a good week this week. And, that's a really positive thing to do. But then there's so many people just like, I had a terrible week, so I need to just go and thrash myself in the gym, essentially.
Yeah, you see that quite a lot. And I get a lot of clients who come to me and are basically, if they're not sweating, then they're not working in their mind. And that's the mentality for a lot of people going into the gym, is like, I'm going to go in because what I've done eating wise and how I've been last week not been good enough. So I know I got to get back onto it.
Yeah. And also it's people's perception of what I see a lot of cardiovascular training, like CV work, is they base how successful or how good their CV session was based on how many calories they've burned. They wear their fitness watch or whatever it might be, just like, I went for a run and burned 430 calories. And pay zero attention to potentially their pace, their cadence, their heart rate, whatever any other data that they can look at. It's just simply I burnt this many calories.
And how reliable are those things?
Not
How
even-
reliable are calorie counters on your watch? How reliable are they on the treadmills that you use?
About as reliable as
Could I stand there and throw out a number and probably be more accurate?
probably. Probably. Like you could probably, I could just say to you, I went for a run today, and give you no information on distance, no information on pace, no information on like gradient, and you'd probably be closer at guessing how many calories I burned.
Yeah.
Like they're just not, they're not, no, it's based off an algorithm, isn't it? It's numbers. There's no way in the world that they can be accurate.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that I see is people who go for runs or go and do exercise. Like MyFitnessPal has this bit where you can add in your exercise that you did, and it gives you calories back for you to be able to consume throughout that day.
Yeah.
Is that a good strategy? Like
No.
if I've gone for a run and it's told me I've burnt 453 calories, does that mean I can now have 453 calories of ice cream?
No. No, it's a terrible strategy. Do not do that. Because also the other thing that people don't consider is, so let's say you went out, let's say you did an hour of exercise, and in that hour of exercise, your watch tells you that you have burned, I don't know, 400 calories. So then you come back and just be like, oh, I've burned an additional 400 calories today. But you haven't, because if you sat on the sofa and did nothing for that hour, you're still going to burn calories. So you're not burning an additional 400 calories. You're just burning 400 calories because you would have burnt some of those calories anyway, just surviving. So people like completely overestimate.
And I think people overestimate people who have trained for a long time. People who do endurance, for example, they will be far more adapted to that endurance. Like if it's running, for example, and if I went for a run and they went for a run and we ran exactly the same distances, chances are I'd have burnt far more calories than they would, because one, their body's adapted to it, two, they're far more efficient with like the calories that they're going to be using because they're probably better at running.
Yep.
And I think that people who do a lot of cardiovascular exercise and still pay attention to the calories burned, forget that if you've done a lot of this, your body's going to adapted, and you're either going to be more efficient with those calories or your body's going to be really efficient with and pretty much, well, I know we always do this amount of exercise.
Yeah. The only people who might consider eating those calories back are people who are 100% focused on performance, because they need fuel to be able to perform. But general population, in terms of, I've burnt X amount of calories today, that means I can then go and eat X amount of chocolate in the evening. Like, just don't even bother.
Yeah, it's
complete waste of time.
I always say, like, when people say to me, "Oh, I've exercised in the day," and then they eat bad on an evening, they go, "Oh, I've wasted, like, that. It was pointless going to the gym." And I always say, like, it's never pointless, because you're probably going to do that anyway. You're probably going to go out and eat food and enjoy that anyway. So it's far better for you to have gone to the gym before doing that. But don't use exercise as a way to be able to do that. It just means that if you do accidentally fall off the wagon, if you fall off plan as such, it damage limitation. It's not as bad, and you're actually got something positive out of that day still. Yep. It's not all negative of, I've missed the gym, I've overate, I've like kind of drank myself stupid, now I'm hungover, like, and I've got all of these negative things. At least you've done something positive there. Yep. But it's not something which outweighs each other, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the things people forget as well, going into the gym, is it should be a way to relieve stress. It should not be a way to cause stress. You should be leaving workouts feeling good, not feeling like you've just died.
Yep. Yeah. And so I know you did a post about this probably a long time ago now. But in terms of your life, there's so many things going on in life, and some of those things that go on in your life are going to remove energy from you. They're going to be stressful situations, and some of them are going to give you energy, and they're going to make you feel better. They're going to make you feel good. They're going to make you more productive. So exercise should be one of those things that gives you energy, makes you feel better, makes you more productive throughout the day. Doesn't, take energy away from you. Doesn't feel like it's a chore. Isn't going to stress you out. And if it does, some of the things that you probably need to look at as just a blanket statement of the type of exercise you're doing. Are you enjoying it? How much of it you're doing? Are you potentially doing too much? What's the intensity like? What's the volume like? But ultimately, you want to see exercise as having a positive impact on your life, not having a negative impact on your life.
I find like the only people that may find it stress in their body, like, and even at this point, you may just be doing too much, is if you've got a goal and you're chasing that goal. So if you're an athlete, for example, and you're trying to get fitter for your sport, if you are trying to get, if you're trying to get stronger at certain lifts and you're pushing your body close to your limits, like you have to ask yourself the question of, well, am I doing too much as one? Because that is a definite possibility. You could be doing too much. Is this the right amount of like volume, load, and intensity for me right now? Because you may be doing too much, but at the same time, like, those would be the only people. And you've got to ask yourself, if you are finding that like you're getting really stressed because you're chasing numbers and you're chasing these things, like, well, what are you actually exercising for? Like, is your goal to get like stronger and to get like stupidly fit? Because if these are your goals, then potentially you could come up against times where training feels like a stress, but that's because you're chasing a goal which isn't just to feel better. But if it is to feel better, then are those things really the most important thing? Or is leaving the session feeling good the most important thing?
Yeah. So it probably, in most situations, I would say general population need to be leaving sessions feeling good, because they're more likely to be consistent then. They're more likely to keep going.
Yeah. The what is the goal of each session is really important. And like I said, like, is it to feel good? Or do you have a certain goal for that session? So, for example, like what we've spoke about before when it comes to cardiovascular training and like the intent of sessions, Mark. So do you think like if someone's going in and they've got a goal of a certain session, do you see people, probably especially with cardiovascular work, like pushing way too much compared to what they should be aiming at?
I see two things. So the two things I see, the first one, this is going to sound weird, but the first one is I see people pushing too hard. And then the second one is I see the same people not pushing hard enough. And what I mean by that is, as Charlie said, like going into some cardiovascular work, like realistically, you want to be looking at that in a way to develop energy systems, in a way to get better, in a way to get fitter, not just an opportunity to burn calories. Because ultimately, if you're training your energy systems, you're going to be burning calories anyway, but you're just going to become fitter. But what we see is people who want to get better at endurance work generally train too hard. So, and we spoke about this on previous podcasts in terms of people go out for a run and they just try and PB their run every single time. And it's just, A, it's not achievable, and B, it's just not a very good way to get fitter. And then secondly, people neglect high intensity interval training, not on purpose, but they think they're doing high intensity interval training. But what's really happening is what should be easy sessions, people do them too hard. So again, like they go out for a run, they try and PB their run every single time. So their session is too hard, which should be an easier session. So what that then means, when it comes to doing their harder sessions, they're too fatigued, so they don't have the energy to push hard enough for these hard sessions. So I see in a lot of the general population, there's no gear change. So everything, whether they're trying to run quote unquote easy or whether they're trying to train quote unquote hard, they're kind of just middle of the roading everything. Their easy sessions aren't easy enough. Their hard sessions aren't hard enough. And the reality is most of the general population probably don't even think, oh, I'm going to have an easy cardiovascular session or I'm going to have a hard cardiovascular session. They just think, I'm going to do some cardio and just try and
try and go as hard as they can all of the time. And then what that ends up doing is their easy sessions are too hard, their hard sessions aren't hard enough. So they're just like in this no man's land, not really getting anywhere.
Do you think most people do that because they are using cardiovascular training as a way to offset their nutrition?
I would say that the majority of people, and this isn't obviously everybody, but I would say the majority of people see and use cardiovascular exercise as a way to, come back from some of the poor nutritional strategies that they have in place.
Yeah, I find that I find that so much that it hurts.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really difficult. How do you explain to someone that it's a poor tool?
So, the way I try and explain it to people is in the most simplest way that I possibly can. And as Charlie just said, like, exercise is actually a really poor strategy for losing weight. Nutrition is way more powerful when it comes to weight loss. If we're talking about body compositional changes and muscle mass and that sort of stuff, that's a different story. But if we're just talking simply losing weight, exercise is a really poor strategy for you to use. And one of the easiest ways that I try and explain this to people is, so let's say you're going to go out for a run, and your sole aim is to burn 400 calories. There's no other aim. You're just going to run until your watch tells you you've burnt 400 calories, and that's it. You're going to get off the treadmill. So that's probably, for most people, going to take them, I don't know, somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour, depending on, size, weight, pace, that kind of stuff. But let's say it takes 45 minutes to burn 400 calories. How long do you think it takes to consume in food 400 calories? What do you reckon?
Cool, that would take me about a minute, I reckon.
Yeah. So your options are go for a run for 45 minutes, which is going to take up 45 minutes of your time. It's going to make you more fatigued because you're doing 45 minutes of exercise. So it's just going to add stress and fatigue to your systems. It's probably going to make you hungry because you just burnt 400 calories and done some exercise. Or your other option is don't go to McDonald's on the way home.
Yeah, like, isn't it like, how much is a can of Coke? Like 250 calories?
Probably, something like that. Like, just don't drink it.
Yeah.
Don't drink your can of Coke and don't eat your 4 biscuits. And you've had the same effect as what going for a 45-minute run will.
Right. So why should people do cardiovascular work in the gym then? If most people are using that as a tool for fat loss, because they just know it as the one way that I lose weight, or the one way that I keep these calories off me is to do cardiovascular work. Now Mark's told me there's no point in doing that to lose weight. Why should I still go to the gym and do cardiovascular work?
Because if your heart stops beating, it's game over. Essentially. You're like, your health. If people, you hear this all the time. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Like, your health is your number one priority. And there is no... resistance training is really, really useful. I would never say, like, don't do resistance training because, if anything, resistance training is going to help keep the elderly out of hospitals because it's going to help improve posture. It's going to help keep them stronger. Therefore, their chances of falling over are going to be reduced, X, Y, and Z. However, for overall health of your cardiorespiratory system, your heart and your lungs, like, nothing is going to come close to cardiovascular exercise.
Yeah. I just think, like, I think you need to be smart with why you're doing things and just understand that going to the gym and flogging yourself because you've ate off plan or you've overconsumed or you've had too many cheat meals, as people say, like, it's not a good way to do it. And there's a lot better things you could be doing with your time than spending 45 minutes on a cardiovascular piece of equipment just because that's your goal. Because I think then it comes to the point of your mindset when it comes to this. Like, are you going into the gym for a positive reason because you love yourself, because you want to be fit and healthy? Like, you should be going into the gym, exactly what Mark said. Like, if your heart stops, it is game over. You need to go to the gym and work on your cardiovascular and do exercise to make yourself feel better. Not only like just to lift mood, but if you are fitter, life gets easier. If you're stronger, life gets easier. The majority of all elderly people, like you fall over, you break your hip, and you die in hospital of pneumonia. And that is because you cannot keep your body upright. Like most elderly people, if I look at, even to the point of like my dad, my mum, like who are only mid-50s, like they're starting to decline strength-wise. Their proprioception's like through the floor. Their balance is all over the shop. And if you can go to the gym to combat those things, it's not to make you look better, even though that is a byproduct. It's to give you a better quality of life while you're here. Not necessarily just like make your life longer, but to make the quality of your life better. And that's why if you're going into the gym with this mentality of, oh, I hate myself, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. And also, people live such sedentary lifestyles nowadays. You know, you can, especially like during lockdown, and obviously even still now, a lot of people are working from home. Like, if you really wanted to, you don't have to leave your house. Like, you work from home, you can get your food shopping delivered. You can pretty much get anything you want in the world off Amazon. Like, you can, clothes shops will deliver. So you can literally survive and live your life without leaving your house. But
you literally can't you?
Yeah, you don't need to leave.
That's mental.
Like, it's mad. Like, you know, you can eat, you can wash, you can work without leaving your home.
Ever.
Yeah. But your mental and physical health is going to take like a serious decline.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I like to, if you're listening to this and you're going, well, I don't necessarily need to do cardiovascular work because I want to try and lose weight. Like, that's my pure focus. I don't really care about being fit. Like, anything like that, then just go for walks. Go for a brisk walk. Like, get your heart rate up by doing that. Like, walk for 10 minutes after each meal, and that will give you some movement throughout the day. Like, challenge yourself in that way. That way you don't have to dedicate like 45 minutes. Like, plus probably if you add, say it is 45 minutes just to burn those 400 calories, and say you add driving to and from the gym, like you could be looking at like upwards of an hour and a half just to go and stand on a treadmill or run on a treadmill. Whereas you could just walk around where you live. You could walk to the park. You could go and see different sites. Like, you do not necessarily have to go to the gym just to do that. Like, there are better things you could be doing when you do that.
Yeah. But I do think everybody should do cardiovascular exercise, but just for the right reasons. So for your health, whether that be, as Charlie just said, just like go for a walk, that will be enough to keep you healthy, or to develop your energy systems, like to get fitter.
There's a really good, like, I think there's a real positive to getting overall fitter in whatever your pursuit. Like, if you're trying to build muscle, it will probably help
massively.
Because if you're, for example, going into higher rep ranges, because we know all rep ranges build muscle, like, two things are going to happen. Either your muscles are going to fatigue, or your lungs are going to pretty much give up on you. You're not going to be able to keep going purely because the fatigue kicks in way too quickly. So, like, if you can start to like bring up your endurance a little bit and make yourself fitter, it will make that pursuit easier. It makes general life easier, like chasing around your grandkids, doing loads of different things. Like, being fitter does help almost everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess the biggest thing, like, what would you say the biggest reason people do go into the gym and they see it as punishment? Do you think it is just a poor relationship with exercise and food and things like that? Do you think it's the way that it's portrayed on the media? Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, but I think the biggest reason is probably people's relationship with themselves. As in, they probably don't. There's a lot of people who don't think very highly of themselves. There's a lot of people who lack confidence. There's a lot of people who lack self-esteem. I think lockdown has probably made some of those situations worse. There's a lot of people who struggle with their mental health. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why people see exercise as punishment, because they maybe look in the mirror and just don't really like what they see. So just try and punish themselves to, make themselves better and think like, oh, if I punish myself for the next 6 months, like I'll be much happier. But I think if that is the reason why you're going to the gym, to punish yourself, I don't think in 6 months' time you will be happier. I think you've got to really try and figure out like what is going to make you happier, and then actually work towards that goal. Because I don't think just beating yourself up every day is going to end up having a positive result.
Yeah. Like why are you doing what you're doing? I know I always say that, like, why are you training in the first place? And I think the more people start to kind of piece together that training helps so many things, not just like, I just think the way we are in this world at the moment with Instagram and things like that, like everything's for show. Like, and don't get me wrong, like I train majority of the time purely to get stronger and to look better. Like that is what I train for. But at the same time, like I don't ever do something as a way of punishing myself.
Mm.
Like I'm always going into the gym to try and improve.
Yeah.
And I think like that should be the big switch for someone. Like set yourself a mini challenge. Like what am I going to do? And like if it is just a lack of information, that is probably why a personal trainer is so useful. Someone who's going to educate you on the topic of like fitness, on the topic of nutrition, like what Mark's just said, that nutrition is a far better way to put yourself in a calorie deficit if you do want to lose body fat, compared to just flogging yourself in the gym and punishing yourself for whatever reason.
Yeah. I also think people have this mentality of, we think that more is better. It's just like, oh, if I earn more money, I'll be able to live a better life.
You get
It's
more
like,
stress with that. You earn more money. You've got more responsibilities.
Yeah. Or things like they have an injury, so they start taking painkillers or whatever. Just like, oh, if I take more painkillers, or if I take stronger painkillers, like it's going to be better. And then I think all of that carries over into our environment. People just like more sets, more reps, more running, like, and they just think, oh, if Mark's told me to do 30 minutes, well, if I do 45, then it's going to be better, isn't it?
I wonder why we're always looking for more. Like, it's the same with people who take drugs. Like, they take drugs and then they get so used to the amount of drugs they're taking, they have to take more drugs. It's the same with like coffee is a drug. Caffeine is a drug, by the way. And I think I am very much adapted to the amount of coffee I'm drinking at the moment. So I'm constantly pre-workouts don't faze me anymore.
Yeah. Used to wake up and have a coffee, and now wake up and have a Jack 3D.
Yeah, and it's just like, and we're always looking and chasing that next thing, that thing that is more. And I think building up your relationship with yourself to be more positive, it's really difficult to do. I think like having a positive relationship with yourself is really hard. Like when I first started training, for example, like it was after I broke up with like my first girlfriend from school. So I was like 18, and I was like, well, I'm just going to get massive and shredded, and like that'll solve all my problems. And like 2-3 years down the line, I was still very miserable and just a little bit bigger. Like, and it wasn't until I started to kind of change the way I looked at training and saw it as like, well, actually, like when I get these little wins, I feel better about myself. When I get stronger, I feel better about myself. Like this gives me more confidence, because not only do I look better, but like I spend a good portion of my day kind of just solely for myself, shut off from everything else and completely focused on one thing.
Yeah.
And there's very few times, like I've just gone back to rugby, for example, and that is pure time for myself. And I think having the gym is one of those places to go in and just kind of a cheaper version of therapy almost.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you just said is a good point as well, in terms of people seem to base their level of self-worth on what they look like. You know, they think somebody who's in better shape is like more valuable, or has more more worth than somebody else. Whereas obviously, that's not the case. And everybody's going to have bad days. Everyone's going to have days where just like, oh, I feel like crap. I feel like I look like crap. Like, that happens. I think that's just, that happens to everybody. But your whole life shouldn't be valued around what you look like.
It's a very slippery slope. Like, it must be really hard for, I look at, there's people that come off my Instagram sometimes. They're like, I don't know, they're people from America. They're these people that do like HIIT workouts in the sea and do like 7 variations of burpees.
HIIT workouts in the sea?
Yeah, it's bonkers. But like completely shredded. And I'm like, imagine having to keep that up. Like, because as soon as you don't, you know that people on the internet are just going to come and abuse you.
They don't keep that up. They look like that for a week or so, film a load of content, and then like drip feed it out throughout the rest of the year. People don't look like what they look like on Instagram all the time. Right?
And that's the thing. Like, people need to. I think your self-image and your body image can really get confused, because like people look in the mirror and they go, "Oh, I'm so fat," and it's like, no, you have fat on your body. Like, you're not. Does not mean that you're a fat person. Does not mean that you are this like. It does not mean that you're a negative. You're negative. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not a bad thing where you're at. And like, if there's something about yourself that you don't like, there obviously is things you can do, but you've got to realize that your value comes from so much more than what you look like. I think majority of it comes from like the person you are, and it is really hard to remember that sometimes. Yeah,
well, nobody like went to a funeral and were just like, oh, he was a great guy, had a 6-pack, massive quads, real good set of triceps. It don't happen, does it?
No, it doesn't ever. If you've heard someone, and I'm talking who's not a professional bodybuilder, if you've heard someone like kind of read out a eulogy, and in it just be like, this guy had the best rear delts I've ever seen in my life. Like, I don't think you're ever going to get that. I don't think that's the impact you have on people's life. Like, and yes, it could be a positive to make you feel more confident. So use it as that. Like, when I had a client talking to me about, I want to lose weight for my wedding, and I was like, why? She was explaining that she doesn't want to look fat and things like this, and she wants to make sure she looks good and fits in the dress. When like really it just comes down to she wants to be confident on a day and not feel like people are looking at her and things like that. She wants to walk down the aisle feeling more confident. That's a far more positive reason than going, well, I want to do it because I hate how I look. Like, I hate how fat I am. And have this real like self-negative kind of talk, because you can't keep that up forever, man.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult thing. I think one of my last points anyway is when you do go into the gym, like, practice not punishment. Look at everything as a skill. Like, you're going in to get better at something, and what is that one thing? Like, every time we program a workout, for example, we program it with an intent to get better at one thing or a couple of things, or we want to work on certain strengths here and build up certain weaknesses there. Like, every time you go to the gym, like, what are you there to practice? Are you there to get like better at your intervals? Are you there to get a better 2,000 meter split time? Are you there to kind of work on your form with the squat? Like, why are you going into it? Because everything is a skill, and if you're stuck like on a plateau of anything, don't necessarily look at all of these other technical things that people go to. Like, just look at the skill. Have you mastered the skill yet? And a lot of time the answer is no.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, and I completely agree. And it also leads back to all of the other stuff that we've kind of discussed in terms of, in order for you to get better at skills, you're not going to develop and grow and get better in a negative environment. You're not going to grow and develop and get better in an environment where you're just under huge amounts of fatigue. So if you are going into the gym, and you know there's like a negative headspace in terms of you're trying to punish yourself, or you're going into the gym and you've not eaten enough because you're trying to lose weight, and you just think, oh, well, if I don't eat and do exercise, then, double whammy, even better. So you're just mega fatigued. In both of those scenarios, you're not going to be able to do well at learning and developing other skills. So all of this links to each other, but they're all really good separate points within themselves.
Yeah, I think just you need everyone. I think the main thing that people go into this is purely, like you said, it's the relationship with themselves. I think like I flutter back and forth with it. Like sometimes I'm really positive with where I'm at, and then I don't know if it's when I have a lack of direction, which I start picking holes in like how I look and things like that, because I'm just like, oh well, I'm not really working towards anything. Like, oh, let's pick holes in this. Do you know what I mean? I've got this to focus on, I guess.
I don't think all of that is a bad thing, because I think, always wanting to strive for a little bit more is probably not a bad thing. If you're always finding, oh, this could be better, I think that says a lot about what you're, something you're trying to work towards, as long as, we said it's done in the right sense. It's not done in a way as just like, oh, well, I feel rubbish about this, so I'm just going to beat myself up for the next 3 months until I get there. Rather than having, well, I want to work towards this, I want to get better at this, here's a clear action plan that I'm going to follow in order for me to be able to achieve that. I think, both of those things are you trying to make yourself better in one way or another, but two very different scenarios.
Yeah, it's got to come from a positive place. It can't come from I just don't think anything really works from like a negative place. Like if you've got someone in work, for example, who's trying to like undermine you or like be really negative to you and like, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way, I'd have done it this. Do you know what I mean? If you've got someone like that around you, like that person very rarely comes off the victor. Do you know what I mean? Like most people, if you've got a good enough character, like you will come out on top and still be a good person. Like I know people say like, oh, what is it gets you nowhere. Being a nice person gets you nowhere. I've seen a load of people say
nice people finish last.
And things like that. And it's just like, well, I don't really know that, because like I like to think I surround myself with nice people, and I like to weed out people who I don't think are very nice.
Yeah.
So like most of my world is pretty positive, and I think you can do that for yourself. And like,
absolutely,
if you're the only person, like you may genuinely be the only person in your life which is negative to yourself.
Yeah. You usually are. Like, a lot of people are like their biggest self-critic, aren't they? Which again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if it's, done in the right sense and maybe got a bit of a lid on it. But yeah, most people see you very differently to the way that you see you.
Yeah.
But I think if we can get people to change, obviously the type of gym that we work in is more based around performance, fitness, and strength anyway. But I think if we can get people to change their mindset around, it's that difference between exercise and training, isn't it? Like I think there's a very big difference between exercise and training. For me, exercise is just like pretty much what we're talking about. You're just going through the motions, you're trying to burn calories, there's no structure, you're just doing whatever. Whereas training is you're working towards a clear goal of being stronger, being fitter. And I think if people can change their mindset and start training more, and start working towards wanting to be stronger, wanting to be fitter, as opposed to wanting to learn new skills, as opposed to just, I'm just going to go to the gym, stay on the treadmill until I burn 400 calories, and then that's me done.
I don't know how you get people to do that. I guess it is just constant explaining how things work, how our bodies work. Like you say, the fact that the reason I mentioned the fat loss thing is because the majority of people are looking for a change in body composition.
Yeah,
and the majority of people think going in and beasting themselves on some kind of cardiovascular equipment is the way to do it. And I just wanted to show people that that is not probably the best way to do it. So maybe going in and flogging yourself is not the best thing to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Is there anything else you think you'd like to add? Like, again, make sure your workouts are going in and kind of you're leaving them feeling good, not feeling more stressed, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, I do think a lot of people generally tend to do more than what they need to do. In terms of, there's plenty of times I've created training programs for people, and they're just like, oh, I did this, it was a little bit short, so it was a little bit shorter than what I usually train for, so like, I did this at the end. It's just like, well, why?
Yeah.
Like, people look at something on paper and are just like, oh, I usually do like 2 more sets than that, so I just did a few extra sets. Or people are like, oh, I said this much weight, but I usually do this much weight, so like I just put an extra 10 kilos on it. It's like, people are always trying to just do more and more and more, and sooner or later, like, they can't do more, so they just end up reversing and going backwards. I think people are in such a rush to do things nowadays. They want to, we spoke about this before, they want to train for the next 6 weeks, they want to train for the next 12 weeks. Just like, well, why not let's just train for the next 20 years?
It's understanding that it's more than just the way you look.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where a lot of people come into fitness, is to change how their body looks. And I think once they realize that it helps your mental health, it helps you feel better, it probably will help your relationships. I'm a lot of a nicer person once I've trained.
Yeah.
Blown
People
off
want
some
to come
steam.
in and be like, all show and no go,
I'd probably say I'm close to that at the moment.
Whereas I'd prefer like a little bit of show and way more go.
Oh, I'm probably a grower, not a shower. Is there anything else?
I think that's a good place to end.
Perfect. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to get in touch or ask any questions, please send an email to info@realcoachingradio.co.uk. If you're interested in joining the coaching world and enhancing your education, please head to www.myptcourse.com. There are level 2 and level 3 courses that will help you get started in your fitness career. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Real Coaching Radio. I think ultimately working on your relationship with yourself is probably going to be the best way to get out of this. I suppose that, and educating yourself, because I think if you don't know that cardiovascular work or going to the gym and training like in a certain way is not going to kind of help your goals, it might help you realize that maybe that's not the best way to do things. So just try and work on your relationship with yourself. It's one of the hardest things to do ever, because it's very easy for self-hate to kind of creep in. And I just think one of the best ways you can do that is just to really catch yourself each and every time you are negative to yourself, because it does happen probably more than you think. And along the lines of like nutrition and stuff like that, telling yourself you can't have something compared to I don't want that will be a big help, because you make the decision then. You're not a kid who can't have something. Like, you're an adult who makes the decision that you're eating a certain way or you're doing something because you know it's going to benefit you and it's going to make you feel better. It's going to help your sleep. It's going to help your digestion. It's going to help your mood. It's going to help everything, not just food, but training as well. So thank you once again for tuning in. Like I said, you can get in touch with us on Instagram as well if you want to. Me and Mark are both on there. You can find me at Hack the Body, Hack the Mind, and you can find Mark at Mark Origin Series, and you can get in touch with us there if you do want to ask any questions or just kind of see what we're up to. But thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Real Coaching Radio.